All right, it's about that time. We're talking about Jamey's start of the week, and it is J.K. Dobbins. And fantasy managers were just down bad week one because we had the whole Christian McCaffrey situation. Puka Nacua gets injured. Where were any of the tight ends? And I was hitting the panic button on Marvin Harrison Jr. and Drake London, who I think got me a combined 3 points or something together. Anywho, Jamey, this is your start of the week. Expectations for this guy were tampered, of course, going into this year because the injury bug is something that has hit him badly. Missed 43 games in his career because of injury, but he looked really good week one. If we look at the numbers, 135 yards, a touchdown, 10 carries, 99% rostered here in PPR leagues on CBS Sports. And Jamey, he is your start of the week. Why is he primed for a good week, aside from the obvious that they are facing the Panthers, who, Derek Carr looked like an MVP person. But why is he primed for a big week from you?
I mean, you said a lot of it. I think there's a lot to love about the situation here. First off, for the Panthers, they're down Derek Brown, who's their best interior defensive lineman. He's going to be out for a while with a knee injury, so that matters for a defense that's bad, and the Chargers are going to be on the field a lot, and that benefits the running back. So Gus Edwards is going to have a role here. He actually had one more carry than J.K. Dobbins in that game last week, but you saw the upside of what Dobbins can be when he's healthy. Gus Edwards averaged 2.4 yards per carry. Dobbins had 2 carries over 40 yards. He hit almost 20 miles per hour, one of the fastest running backs in week one. So he looks like he's back to being the best of J.K. Dobbins, and now you just got to give him a little bit more work. That's the only concern, is that will they feed him enough to benefit? But based on what I saw, based on those explosive runs, based on this defense, how bad they were, they couldn't stop Alvin Kamara, they couldn't stop Jamal Williams, they couldn't stop Taysom Hill. It's going to be a field day for the Chargers from a running game perspective, and J.K. Dobbins has top 12 upside. Sportsline probably has it right that he's going to be number 6.
I think 6 is a little crazy. 12 is just right, and I feel like I'm a little bit behind on here. You could take away Dobbins' 2 best runs from last week, and he still averaged more than a full yard per carry over Gus Edwards. So we've got to hope that the Chargers coaching staff sees this, recognizes that he's the best running back, and they give him the rock against Carolina, who were absolutely just smashed last week. I have my buddy from my childhood, Brian, who's debating Dobbins versus Xavier Worthy, and he likes Worthy because he thinks he's so much fun. Dobbins is going to touch the ball more than Worthy. He's got just as much of a shot to have a big play as Xavier Worthy. I'd start Dobbins over Worthy. I'd start Dobbins over a lot of people this week. I think Jamey's onto something.
All right, Jamey, if we get to the rest of your starts, I mentioned the panic button that I was, pressing on a lot of guys, and Malik Neighbors, he was one of them for me, but he is one of your starts if we go down the list.
He was actually the best rookie, in terms of receiving yards. So let's keep that going and do a little bit more. And it's against a Washington defense that couldn't stop Mike Evans, couldn't stop Chris Godwin, couldn't stop Jalen McMillan, another rookie that scored a touchdown last week against the secondary. So big opportunity for Neighbors to continue to build off what was a good start, just not a great start. 5 catches, 66 yards. You mentioned Drake London, people panicking. Raheem Morris after the game said we got to feed Drake London more. I think we'll see that. The Eagles secondary is still a little bit of a work in progress, and you know that Kirk Cousins is going to look a little bit better. At least that's the hope. I think we'll see a lot more pass attempts from the Falcons, so I like to set up for Drake London. Jared Goff, last week's start of the week, he flopped, didn't get multiple touchdowns, but this week taking on Tampa Bay defense that's down 4 members of their secondary, including star safety Antoine Winfield. So there's a big chance for Jared Goff back at home. We know the numbers from last week. It was 16 of 21 going into the game. Now it's 16 of 22 with 20 or more fantasy points. I think Jared Goff will play better this week in his building. And then for Brock Bowers, look, it's a tough matchup for him taking on a good Baltimore defense, but he led the Raiders in targets. I think he'll have an opportunity here to continue to be featured from this offense. They're probably going to be chasing points, so a lot of opportunities there. And we heard prior to the game that they wanted to show off his versatility, and we saw that. And I think we're going to continue to see more and more of that. Jerome Ford's in such a great situation for this week. The Jaguars last year could not stop pass-catching running backs. What did we see last week? Devon Achane, 7 catches. Jerome Ford had nearly 20 total touches in a game where they were getting destroyed. He's going over 20 total touches this week. He's somebody I feel like I got too low. He's going to be closer to the top 12 as well.
You can see on Sportsline, 13th there. Heath has him at 12, so you might be right about that too.
All right, so Dave, your starts, of course. Naturally, we're all thinking, what are we going to do with Christian McCaffrey? Doesn't play against the Jets, limited at practice. Jordan Mason, naturally, is one of your starts.
You've got to find a way to get him into your lineup against Minnesota. We know that the Vikings looked amazing last week on run defense against the Giants, but it was the Giants. They looked amazing all the way around. The Giants offense only ran the ball, at least with their running backs, 14 times in that game. So, of course, it's going to make the Vikings defense look good. Jordan Mason averaged 5.3 yards per carry against the Jets. in week 1. He also had great metrics on top of that, very explosive. I would find a way to get him into fantasy lineups. A lot of Commanders on my list. Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin. Who are they playing? The Giants, the team that looked terrible in week number 1. I think they continue to look terrible. I've got Jaden Daniels as a top 6 quarterback this week, by the way. McLaurin, a big bounce back game. Had a shot at 2 long touchdowns in that matchup last week against Tampa. Should have come through on at least one of them, just a slight overthrow. I think he gets there this week. Brian Robinson leads the way for their run game. Totally a big fan of what Jameson Williams has been doing. Jamey talked about Jared Goff. That matchup against Tampa Bay should be a shootout. Lots of points. You want to get a piece of that. And I have a funny feeling there's going to be a lot of points scored in that matchup between the Saints and the Cowboys, Jacqueline. And so Taysom Hill, I know a lot of fantasy managers struggling at tight end, and Taysom Hill, somebody that was picked up and is on the bench in a lot of leagues. Maybe make some trades. Go for Taysom Hill this week to get a little bit more work in the run game and to get more catches as well. Saints are going to have to throw in this game against Dallas.
It's always fun when you get guys that have been in the league a few years and you can look at historical performances, when there's rivalries. Terry McLaurin against the Giants, 9 times he's faced them, 8 times. 13 or more PPR points. So there's a very good floor, and you just got to make sure that Daniels feeds him enough. There's a big opportunity here for McLaurin.
And I think that Daniels won't have to run around as much. He was blitzed a ton last week.
No. Let him run around.
No, he's going to do some of that. It's not going to be like last week. I hate to tell you.
Here's what's going to be fun. They've gone, it's like 20 some odd games without a 100-yard rusher. Brian Robinson, it's great call to have Brian Robinson. He was another guy I was considering for start of the week. Brian Robinson and Jaden Daniels both are going to be racing to get that first 100-yard performance. Daniels last week was 12 yards short, 88 yards rushing. I think Robinson's going to have an opportunity to do that a lot this year. So it could happen in this game against the Giants.
But the Giants don't blitz a lot, and so Daniels will be a little cool in the pocket.
But that front four will still make him
throws.
full pressure.
Some pressure. I don't think it's going to be as big as you think. I think that we're still going to see a good game from McLaurin, from Robinson, from the Commanders.
Yeah, I feel like since Baker Mayfield had such a great game last week, we kind of sort of forgot or went under the radar when it came to Jaden Daniels, but he showed up as well. He had a great week.
As a runner, yes. As a passer, not so much.
Yes. Talk about your sits, Dave. You have Christian Kirk. He is on there.
Yeah.
So run us through the list, starting with Kirk. Why is he one of your sits this week?
Tough matchup this week against the Cleveland Browns, and I'm not sure he's even the best receiver in Jacksonville anymore. Brian Thomas was making plays downfield. Kirk had a couple of drops. I'm very nervous. And last week, the Browns, just a 42% completion rate allowed to receivers who line up in the slot. That included CeeDee Lamb on 7 targets, by the way, not snaps, targets. Christian Kirk is just somebody that I would try and get away from. Amari Cooper, I think he's a wide receiver 3. I like the matchup better for him against Jacksonville. We know that Tyson Campbell is going to play, but Deshaun Watson's the problem. He continues to just, if it's a short drop, 3 steps, he can complete that pass. But that pass is going 10 yards. It's not going to be down the field. When he had a chance to hit Cooper deep downfield, he overthrew him. So I'm worried about Cooper ever being back to like a top 12 type of wide receiver. And even against Jacksonville, even with their secondary beat up, I don't think Cooper is a top 24 wide receiver at all. And then 3 running backs on this list. Zamir White is an easy call against Baltimore. He's just not going to get the ball very much. DeAndre Swift against Houston, tough matchup. He's not going to get the ball very much. And Aaron Jones did get the ball a lot last week. He had a great game, crushed that Giants defense, but this is the 49ers that he's going up against. They held Breece Hall to under 3.6 yards per carry last week. He had a short area touchdown, had 5 catches. Jones is going to need to have that in order to come through. Not a top 20 running back this week.
I actually like Cooper and Kirk this week. I think Cooper's going to benefit. 9 targets last week, and you mentioned no Tyson Campbell, and I think Kirk actually may bounce back. We saw that last year. Terrible week 1, bounce back in week 2. A couple drops in that game for the Jaguars, and they mentioned on the broadcast that the calf was probably still bothering him. I think he's going to be 100% healthy in this game. Some guys I'm avoiding this week. Joe Burrow, I need to see it from him first. Did not look good last week. No T. Higgins most likely. I know the Chiefs gave up a lot of rushing production to Lamar Jackson and probably should have given up 2 passing touchdowns to Lamar Jackson. But Jackson at the top of his game right now. Joe Burrow's got to get there. Javonte Williams was outplayed by Jaleel McLaughlin. Now he's going to take on a Steelers defense that did a good job containing Bijan Robinson from a ground perspective. So I would get away from Javonte Williams for now. We'll see if Audric Estime's absence helps him out in the near future. George Pickens, good luck. You got to take on Patrick Surtain, who took away DK Metcalf last week. And the nice thing about Pickens, he moved in the slot a little bit more. Most he's played in the slot in his career was last week. So they are being a little bit more creative with him. But Surtain eliminates everybody, and we saw that for Metcalf. So Pickens, not a starter in 2 receiver leagues. And the same thing with DJ Moore. Caleb Williams got to do a lot better. Only less than 100 yards passing. Derek Stingley in that secondary is going to make things tough on Caleb Williams once more. And DJ Moore may benefit without Rome Odunze there, but not somebody that I want to start. I would try and get away from him if you can. Just don't like the setup for him going forward.
All right, gentlemen, it wouldn't be a traditional fantasy segment with the three of us if I didn't try to squeeze in my own personal question. I know you guys are on different sides when it comes to Christian Kirk, low-end flex. Is that maybe a good happy
Well, who
medium?
else do you have on your team that you're
I got to look. I
considering?
don't know. My wire's getting crossed because I'm in 3 different leagues, but I feel like when I looked, he was my best option in a flex position.
And so if that's the case and it's a PPR league, it's probably the right call to go with him.
Yeah, he's not a slam dunk by any stretch, but I do think this is going to be a bounce back game for him based on what we saw last year. Can't get any worse. Last week, excuse me. And the perimeter receivers for the Jaguars could be a little bit of trouble, so I think this is an opportunity for Trevor Lawrence to lean on Kirk this week.
Okay, and we actually have a producer question as well. We're going to squeeze that into Tua or Brock Purdy. Who do you start?
Tua.
I'm going with Tua over Purdy. What did I call him? Tuda?
Tuda.
Tuda.
Is that his new nickname?
Hopefully he doesn't
Even
give
against
a
Josh
Tuda
Allen
on
and
your
the Bills,
fantasy
you're
team.
gonna pick Tua?
Well, it's not like they play against each other or anything like that. And if anything, if Josh Allen's going to put up points, then Tua's going to have to throw to get some numbers. And he's got some pretty good wide receivers. There's questions about his run game. Absolutely Tua over Purdy.
All right, Jamey, Dave, we certainly appreciate it answering our fantasy questions, starts and sits for week 2. You can hear the fellows on Fantasy Football Today. The conversation continues. You can download, follow, listen wherever you get your pods, or you can watch right now by scanning that QR code.